Good evening, everyone. This is Jay Simmons, president of Mach 30. Good evening again. I think we're live now. Hangouts.
Yep, I show that we're live.
So, good evening. Welcome to the October 2014 Reports Hangout for Mach 30. I'm going to turn it over to Greg to MC for us tonight. So, without further ado, Greg, take it away.
Since Jay's got a lot of talking to do tonight, I'll do some of the meeting particulars. And thanks for the introduction, Jay. As most folks probably know, this is the monthly Reports Hangout for Mach 30's status update on all the cool things that we have going on. I would have to mention that none of the stuff that you hear tonight would be possible without the generous support of our Catalyst Club donors and backers. So if you could help us out and head over to mach30.org, click the Catalyst Club button in the upper right, we would certainly appreciate that. It would bring you more open source spaceflight hardware goodness. So that's a win for everybody. And for again, the Reports Hangout, for those that don't know, is organized by buses or our project areas, which we've recently realigned based on our what we told the IRS we're going to be working on. So themes like open source spaceflight hardware, supporting the open source hardware community at large, education and outreach, and then business operations. It's kind of the administrative side of things. I don't see anything here on the agenda for the new emerging spaceflight technologies.
Now, in theory, that stays pretty quiet till we're much more old. We're a much older organization and have run out of mature technology to use.
Yep. So with that, we can kick things off and start talking about current progress in the last month with respect to open source spaceflight hardware. Now, the effort in that area is mostly around an export control-free roadmap. So the technology that Mach 30 is going to work on that can be free of any export control restrictions. And Jay's done a little bit of work on that. We talked about it last week at our Engineer Speak Hangout. So Jay, do you want to give us an update of what you have posted already?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been the last couple of months hinting that we were going to start working on this roadmap, and I'm very happy to report that the roadmap work has finally begun. We're tracking that work on Open Design Engine. You can follow along and participate over at opendesignengine.net/projects/M30roadmap. I'm trying out some new things in terms of working asynchronously with our project teams over the forums, trying to see how far we can stretch between Engineer Speak meetings. It's going a little rough right now, so I'm not sure how far that part will go, but I intend to take another swing at clarifying some of the process at tonight's Engineer Speak Hangout, and then give it another go in terms of letting people participate back in an asynchronous mode for a week or two, and we'll see what happens. I will keep you all posted. The absolute worst is that we punt on working quite that asynchronously, and the topics that we've set up in forums we can tackle at Engineer Speak Hangouts. Not a big deal, either way.
Sure. And to be honest, it actually caught me a little bit off guard last week. I wasn't prepared to work asynchronously, so it'd be interesting to talk through your plans or intentions when it came to that and figure out a way forward. I don't think it's not going to work, but I just hadn't put a lot of thought into working in that way. So
yeah, it was
later tonight.
An inspiration thing. I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, and I have often been on planes on Thursday nights, and I wanted us to be able to. I wanted to see whether or not we could make some progress. I can see where it would be a bit of a surprise. I tend to be the last one to propose working like that. So yeah, we'll see.
All right. So stay tuned for more. There'll be more conversations and progress on the future technologies of Mach 30 and what projects we're going to keep our focus on. I think that's the only spaceflight hardware thing to talk about tonight.
Yes, I think so too.
Okay, moving on then, the open source hardware community at large. The support that we give them has been in a couple of different areas so far. The Open Design Engine, the regular Mach 30 folks should be familiar with the open source hardware portal. Open Design Engine hasn't had a lot of changes over the last month. Our volunteer Chris didn't report anything, so we'll state that and move on. Next is the Export Controls Task Force, and Jay has been taking the lead on that, but wants to change it up a little bit. Can you elaborate, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our volunteers that's been working with us closely from the beginning of the ECTF is Matt Mayer. He's an active participant in the open hardware movement at large, and a big proponent, independent of his work with us, of open sourcing spaceflight. His master's research was looking at that as a methodology. In fact, we met him through some of his research and his reaching out to us about that.
Yeah, he actually found us, which is cool.
Exactly. Yep. Gotta love it when that happens. And so this is an area that he's deeply passionate about because he also identified it as one of those things that's a huge stumbling block to moving forward with open source spaceflight. So he jumped on board as soon as the ECTF got going and said, yeah, I want to participate in that. And over the last 6 to 9 months has been taking more and more of a point type role in terms of keeping things moving and doing a lot of the legwork. And one of the things we've discovered, as I pointed out in the previous report that I gave, I'm doing a lot of traveling, and in many ways it seems like I might have less time post-PhD than I did during PhD, which is kind of annoying. I'm hoping this is a temporary condition. We have been very busy at work due to winning a bunch of contracts, and I work on the contractual side of the company. So as we catch back up to the workload, I'm hoping things will calm down a little bit. But in the meantime, Matt, temporarily, we'll see if it's a more permanent condition as time goes on, to take over my day-to-day functions of running the ECTF. I will continue to participate as a member and offer Matt any support he needs in terms of if we didn't clarify things enough in the last meeting, he can always email me and say, hey Jay, what about this function? So there you go.
Very cool.
In fact, I think I forgot to invite him, which is probably why he's not here tonight. He's not on my list of people that regularly come to this meeting, so he might be sending me an email later tonight going, Jay, why wasn't I invited to the Reports Hangout? So, sorry, Matt.
To Matt. Yep, sorry about that. Didn't mean to exclude you on purpose.
No, that's all about processes and not having you on my list of regular invites.
All right, hopefully we'll see you next month. And the last item here for our open source, hardware community involvement is on the subject of CodeCAD. We've spent a little bit of time talking about open source CAD tools in general, and that's another impediment or stumbling block for really doing true open source hardware projects. Ever since the summer, with the board talking about it pretty in depth at our conference, the Apogee event, we're going to get more serious about that throughout the rest of this year, and so you'll get an update with the project, the progress towards that project next month. So it's a teaser. Stay tuned for more.
Yeah, Jeremy is leading that activity and couldn't join us tonight. The timing of the Hangout didn't work for him this month, so we'll have to wait for him to be with us next month.
Jeremy, we'll see you next month. All right. Then moving on to the next bus or focus area is the education and outreach. Again, Jay, this will come back to you, but through, as you've mentioned, your travels gallivanting across the country, looks like you stopped in Denver and visited some of our friends. I know the QLab Albuquerque folks go up to Denver all the time, but tell us about your trip to Den Hack.
Cool. Yeah. So where the first two reports I gave were kind of pointing out the downside of all of my work and travel lately. This is the upside, is that I get to go to a lot of cool places, and I make it my high priority outside of when I'm doing the actual work functions to try to reach out and visit the local maker and hacker spaces. We have talked a great deal about that the maker scene is an integral part of expanding open source hardware to larger and larger scale projects. And while makers and open source people are not identical communities, we think that we know from experience there's some overlap, and that each has something to offer the other, especially as we scale up to larger projects. So I was in Denver, just last week, and I swung by and stopped by DenHack. Greg, you'll get a kick out of this. 2 weeks before that, I'd actually gotten a visit at Dayton.io, Dayton's makerspace, from a DenHack member who was in Dayton on business and saw that we had a meeting and stopped by to say hey. And while we were talking, he said, hey, you ought to come by DenHack if you're ever in the area. I was like, I'm going to be there in 2 weeks. So there you go.
Cool.
The best part is that it turned out that he was back in Dayton last week while I was in Denver, so we didn't get to see each other in Denver. Anyway, I got to meet some very, very cool people. They just moved into a new space. Sound familiar, Greg?
Seems like that's the thing to do.
It is. So QLab moved in last year to a new space. Dayton.io just moved into a new space. Nova Labs, where you're at, is in the process of moving into a new space. DenHack just, like, within weeks, moved into a new space. Yeah, it's the thing to do. Anyway, I talked about Mach 30 and ODE. I got some traction about both. Enough that it makes sense to, next time I'm going into the area, to do some outreach ahead of time and schedule an actual session to ship some hardware over and do some live demos. People were really excited by the videos I showed of the shipper test stand. And there was a maker there who built a sticker bot. You could insert a dollar bill and select a sticker, and it would live print out a sticker for you, or you could even upload your own design. It would live make a sticker for you. It was a little fundraising device, and he was actually interested in sharing it as open source hardware. So Chris and/or I need to get a hold of him about Open Design Engine. So, good stuff.
Yep, absolutely. I always love it when we can cross-pollinate ideas across the country like that.
Yeah, me too, me too. It's good stuff.
All right. This is going quick, so we're moving on then to the last bus of business operations. May not be everybody's favorite bus, but I sure like it. So this is something that I volunteered to step up and lead for Mach 30 over the next, time frame as we see fit. That kind of segues into the planning wrap-up. We talked about a little bit the Apogee conference we held this summer, and that was a really strategic level look at how we're moving forward. We talked about the long-term plans in terms of what Apogee would look like in 2020, so that would be like 7 years from now. And over the past Jay, was it 2 or 3?
2 or 3, somewhere in like that. It's definitely last 2, maybe you're right, 3.
2 to 3 board meetings since then. We've put the finishing touches on the planning for the remainder of the year, and that'll take us through the start of next year, which is our Perigee event. Again, that's getting us on a biannual cycle of meeting once a year for low-level planning and kind of nose to the grindstone small details, and a second meeting sometime during the year that does high-level, big-picture things, probably more fun and outreachy kind of activities for our community and for our volunteers. Again, over the past 2 or 3 board meetings, we've basically figured out the priorities in each of these areas. We'll figure out what activities in each of the buses should garner most of our attention. So you'll hear about all of that stuff over the next couple months on the monthly Reports Hangouts.
There you go.
Anything else from your end on that?
No, I think that's about it. Like you said, it's all about setting the priorities. As Jeremy would say, the ruthless cutting of projects to be right scaled with the organization's current size and budget.
Yeah.
Which
There's
is
always too many good
why,
things going on.
what?
There's always too many good things going on.
Amen. Amen. And I think that's actually why the Reports Hangout feels so much lighter in terms of amount of material to cover and how quickly we can get through the content. I've noticed that actually the last couple of months since Apogee, that kind of ruthless focus that Jeremy talks about, I think, is really it's really you can see the results of that in the progress we make month to month on each of these projects and how many we're reporting on in any given month.
There's fewer projects, it seems, but more activity, more focus, more energy developed towards each one.
Yep.
So it's a good trade-off, I think.
I agree.
All right. So that was the planning we did. Out of that planning, one of the topics that has made progress is the Revenue Generation Committee. Basically, we're trying to fund some of the cool things that we're doing and putting some volunteer energy towards income and revenue generation. I've stood up as I've taken over as the chairperson of that committee, and this is a balancing of my time and priorities away from some of the technical spacecraft and systems engineering projects, but I think it's well needed at this point. We have a lot of engineers. There's a lot of activity on the engineer speak side of things, not as much on the boring, in finger quotes, business side. So that'll be starting up here in the next couple of months. I sent out an email to all the volunteers there. They said starting after October 1st, they'll have more time to start this up. So you'll hear more about progress towards that in November. Any questions?
No, I'm very glad to see this going again.
Yep. Coincidentally, for the folks that are following, you might notice that I'll be posting more on the social media outlets. That's one of the things the Revenue Generation Committee was going to try to do, is increase our followership and number of likes and Facebook circles and friends and followers and plus ones and all of those social media outlets. So if you haven't noticed already, go ahead and check those out, subscribe, link, favorite, plus one. That'll help us out in this area. Just a plug for my work.
And I want to ditto that in particular. I've seen the numbers that led the RGC to conclude that, and it's just essential that it is the beginning of sales pipelines is the marketing pipeline. And for us, one of the larger growth potential marketing tools is social media. So it's super important.
Yep. Especially for an online community, right? I mean, that's really where we're doing most of our work, is online via Hangouts and Facebook posts and ODE threads. And so to drive that community, or to grow that community, in a lot of Mach 30's projects and areas.
Yeah, you're right.
So hopefully that'll grow more than just revenue.
It has to. I mean, ultimately, that's what we needed to do.
All right. The last business type item is insurance, and we talked about this at the Apogee event. Basically, the progress and how this is holding up some of the other hardware kits and hardware development that we have going on. There has been a little bit of progress with our insurance agent. Jay, do you want to fill that part in?
Yeah, so since Apogee, we've been in more email correspondence with our agent, and last month I reported that we took 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and it was basically around that we finally got to a point where they were in a position to put a quote together for us, but it was not going to be what we had hoped it would be, because the actual folks running that part of the business felt that the even just the publication of hardware projects was equivalent to, from an insurance standpoint, sales of those hardware projects, which meant that Shepherd potentially exposed us to a lot greater insurance liability than as just a distributed online project than we had thought. But the good news was last month that the folks at the insurance company really wanted to work with us. They're excited about us and our projects and in trying to find a solution. So I went ahead and re-engaged with them. Said, hey, let's step back and really rethink how we're approaching this in general.
Yeah, because they could have easily just said, no, I'm sorry, we can't help you out.
Yeah.
And started that would basically put us back at square one. But they've been really positive, they've been engaged, they understand what we're trying to do, and so this is a great resource to help us figure out what questions to ask.
Absolutely. And in fact, our agent is so excited about it, he was like, can you just bring the test stand over and show it to me? That would be cool. Like, wow, yeah.
Yes.
We can totally do that. Yeah, so when I sent the email back and said, hey, how are hobby stores getting away with selling rocket motors and rockets that fly off of launch pads? How is Etsy's getting away? You know, there cannot be, at the size that model rockets are as an industry compared to like Legos, right, as a toy and hobby and enthusiast kind of thing, the levels of insurance just to buy in that they're quoting us just don't make sense. So when I sent that to him, he's like, oh, yeah, let's get together. And in fact, hey, do you mind if I bring this other person who is from more of the nuts and bolts stuff, and we'll just start over in terms of how we're thinking about this and what it is we're speccing. So that meeting is set for mid-October. Even if we don't get immediate traction there, that, like Greg said, that we continue to get enthusiastic responses means that we've got a lifeline in all of this, as opposed to having to start over. So it's really good news, even if we have to do more work than we had hoped.
Yep. It would have been nice to get a quick win on this one and check this off, but we'll take what we can get.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. There's it's that sustainability piece that we talk about sometimes at Mach 3, and it's in the mission. It's, you know, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So right. I mean, and it goes for the legal side and the business side of the operations as much as it goes for where we're shooting for technically on any given day.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. All right, well, that actually takes us to the end of the updates that I have. Again, we'll want to thank everybody for joining us on the Hangout, whether you're here live, Julie, thank you, Julie, or watching us offline after the fact. Again, Mach 30 can't do the projects and contribute to open source spaceflight hardware without your help, whether it's volunteer time or money. So again, check the link up in the upper right at mach30.org to join the Catalyst Club 2014. Also, if you like the video, click the subscribe button down below and follow us. That way you can become part of the community and help us go to the stars through community. Ad astra persevitatem.
Indeed.
Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.